The latest on Syria. Well, obviously we know what happened, the chemical attack. Whether you believe it was the government, whether you believe it was, the rebels doing it, at this point, it doesn't matter. It does matter, of course, in the end. They'll do an investigation and everything else. But what's the latest now that there's been a retaliatory response from President Trump when he sent in the missiles against the airbase? Well, now the Russians, teaming up with the Iranians, are threatening a military response if President Trump takes further action in Syria. He's been quoted as saying, quote, I would hit Assad again.
There was no order to make any attack. We don't have any chemical weapons. We gave up our arsenals a few years ago. Even if we have them, we wouldn't use them. And we had never used our chemical arsenal in our history.
Since April the 10th, pro-government forces led by the Republican Guard and Liwa al-Quds have been making attempts to advance against Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly Jabhat al-Nusra, the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda, and its allies northwest of the city of Aleppo. So far, government troops captured the areas of Tel Shuweinar and Khirbet Anadan and tried to push further in the direction of Ma'arat al-Atik and Babis. However, this advance has been repelled by the forces led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. On April the 12th, clashes continued in the area, with both government forces and militants trying to advance on each other. Last weekend, the Syrian Arab Army, SAA, the National Defense Forces, NDF, led by the SAA's Tiger Forces, recaptured the strategic town of Suran and the Bizam Hill, which are located north of the Ma'ades village in the northern Hama countryside. The successful advance followed a massive bombing campaign in the area. Over 50 airstrikes reportedly hit militant positions around Suran. The situation remains tense in northern Hama, where the Tiger Forces, the National Defense Forces, NDF, and other pro-government factions embedded with Iranian and Russian military advisors are putting pressure on HTS-led forces aiming to retake Suran and Halfaya.
There's been a very dangerous new alliance in the 21st century, and that alliance is China, Russia, Syria, and Iran. They are lining up together as partners in the global community against the United States, Canada, Mexico, Australia, Europe, and other countries. They're lining up against that. And if there ever was a true world war, those are the factions against one another that would take place. I hope and pray that it never happens. Do I think something could happen, another skirmish? Yeah, I do. Because I think now that with the amount of activity in Syria and the Russians going into the area and we're going into the area, at some point, yes, there could be a confrontation.
3 U.S. soldiers shot in Afghanistan insider attack. 3 U.S. Army soldiers were shot and wounded Sunday when an Afghan Army soldier opened fire on them inside a base in southern Afghanistan's volatile Helmand province, officials told Fox News.
The United States has dropped a gigantic bomb on an ISIS target in Afghanistan. The U.S. used a weapon dubbed the mother of all bombs, the largest non-nuclear bomb in Washington's military arsenal. Damage from the bombing is not yet known. Park Jung-ho.
We are so proud of our military, and it was another successful event.
The United States takes the fight against ISIS very seriously, and in order to defeat the group, we must deny them operational space, which we did. The United States took all precautions necessary to prevent civilian casualties and collateral damage as a result of the operation.
Afghan officials said 36 ISIS militants were killed when the U.S. dropped the mother of all bombs Thursday. The massive ordnance air blast bomb, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the U.S.'s arsenal, was used for the first time in combat on April 13th on a series of ISIS tunnels in remote eastern Afghanistan. The Pentagon released video of the blast, which shows the so-called mother of all bombs dropped on this network of fortified underground tunnels, which ISIS had been using to stage attacks on government forces. According to the Afghan Ministry of Defense, there were no civilian casualties. ISIS caves and ammunition caches were destroyed. President Trump hailed the Afghanistan bombing as another successful job. The U.S. estimates 600 to 800 ISIS fighters are present in Afghanistan, mostly in this region of Nangarhar. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin.
And still in Libya, where the escalating violence has prompted the United Nations-backed unity government to call for urgent intervention. The government of national unity has appealed to the international community to help end the conflict amid warnings of a return to full-scale civil war. However, the UN and the European Union are pushing for a political solution.
Concerns over Libya are increasing on two fronts: the volatile security situation and the continued humanitarian crisis. Within Libya, the UN-backed unity government, the Government of National Accord, or GNA, is calling for urgent international intervention to address the latest escalation in the south, where rival forces have been battling to capture the Temenhant air base. In a letter to the United Nations, the European Union and the Arab League, the head of the GNA, Fayez El-Sarraj, appealed for help to deal with the deteriorating situation there.
Also, Libya, Khalifa Haftar launches offensives to retake the oil ports. And according to some different news sources, BBC being one of those there, that the U.S. has also dispatched their own special forces into the region there. That is going to be something that will not go over too well with NATO and their allies after Russia intervened with Syria. Now it appears that Russia may very well, in fact, be involved in General Haftar's battle to take the country. Russia sends mercenaries to back Libya's Haftar. General Haftar says a force of a dozen armed private security contractors from Russia operated until last month in part of Libya that is under the control of the regional leader Khalifa Haftar. Reuters reported on the head of the firm that hired the contractors as saying it is the clearest signal to date that Moscow is prepared to take back up its public diplomatic support for Haftar, even at the risk of alarming Western governments already irked at Russia's intervention in Syria to prop up the dictator President Bashar al-Assad. And it is believed that Russia may, in fact, come in and back up General Haftar in taking back this country there. We'll have to wait to see how that plays out. Russia definitely getting more and more active on the world stage. And no doubt will not make too many of their other allies around the world very happy regarding this.
There's also on the other side, the Asian Peninsula, that is heating up. That is heating up quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Kim Jong-un, there's reports out that he understands that his life is being threatened with assassination attempts and everything else. He may launch a nuclear test missile or whatever very soon. They're saying in as little as 15 days. They've already launched 5 test missiles. This would be the 6th launch. Now, the American response has been, we are either going to put a team in there to get rid of Kim Jong-un with regime change, or we're going to put nuclear weapons for the first time in 25 years in South Korea. So there's being a buildup obviously, in that area.
I want to begin with CNN's Paula Hancock in Seoul. Paula, fill us in on this breaking news.
Well, Anna, what we have at this point is from a Defense Ministry official here in South Korea saying a projectile was fired this morning, Sunday morning local time, and it appears to have failed. Now, there aren't many more details beyond that. Obviously, intelligence agencies and the military trying to track exactly what kind of projectile this was.
Boom! Donald Trump just went on TV and made a fierce declaration that sent Kim Jong-un into hiding. Jeff Earl for the U.S. political editor Daily Mail reports that President Donald Trump said repeatedly that North Korea's President Kim Jong-un is doing the, quote, wrong thing as he talked up the power of the U.S. Armada heading towards the tense Korean peninsula. Yes, that is what Donald Trump said on television. He said an armada is headed towards the Korean peninsula.
North Korea spoke out against U.S. President Donald Trump's strong rhetoric aimed at the regime. In a rare interview with foreign journalists, the reclusive state's vice foreign minister blamed Washington for the tensions in the region. Our Kwon Jang-ho starts us off.
North Korea has once again declared that it's ready to go to war with the U.S. if necessary, but it also said U.S. President Donald Trump is the one to be blamed for escalating tensions. In an interview with the Associated Press in Pyongyang, Vice Foreign Minister Han Sung-yeol said it was Trump's aggressive tweets that was causing trouble in the region and leading to a vicious cycle of worsening relations. Han warned that if the U.S. decides to make any reckless military maneuvers, Pyongyang would not be afraid to retaliate and use its nuclear arsenal. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi also made comments to try and de-escalate the situation, calling on all parties to refrain from threats before the situation becomes irreversible and unmanageable. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
This formation is led by Major General Gu Yanan and Wang Mi. The Battle of Yingxingguan broke out in September 1937, when Japanese troops engaged with the Chinese at the strategic pass in North China's Shanxi province. It was the first large-scale defeat the Chinese inflicted on the Japanese invaders.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Oh, it's getting real serious. This is a prophecy alert. We have information here that Putin has moved military forces now to the North Korean border as the world prepares for war. Now, you know, China had already moved 150,000 troops to the North Korean border. Now Putin has moved troops to the North Korean border. And as I reported last night, Russia and China are following the USS Carl Vinson as it heads toward the Korean Peninsula. They are following it, not only in the waters, they're monitoring us, they're probing us, and they're using reconnaissance planes over top of the USS Carl Vinson. So this is getting very precarious.
The USS Carl Vinson. This monster supercarrier is the flagship of the U.S. Navy's Carrier Strike Group 1, based out of San Diego. The supercarrier supports 90 fixed-wing jets and helicopters, and at this very moment, the Vinson is speeding toward North Korea. Tensions are rising in the Korean Peninsula, and the eyes of the world are fixated on the region. Will the United States attack North Korea? And if it does, will Kim Jong-un make good on his threat to retaliate with nuclear weapons? We have learned in the past 24 hours that China has deployed 150,000 troops to its border next to North Korea, and it has deployed intercontinental ballistic missiles carrying nuclear warheads. As if the situation didn't already resemble the early stages of a world war, the nation of Japan now intends to make an entrance. The Japanese Navy has announced plans to dispatch several of its destroyers to begin conducting drills with the Vinson as she enters the East China Sea en route from Singapore. But Japan's navy is much smaller than China's, and the two nations are bitter enemies. China and Japan are locked in a territorial dispute over uninhabited islands close to Taiwan. Any joint drills between Japan and the United States are sure to anger China.